oscillation look be careful with these on before is that okay being surrounded like this?
Well, I don't suppose you can guess what it's about.
It's not a yard sale, is it?
Not yet. Give me a few years.
What are these instruments here?
It's called an audio transducer. The term doesn't mean very much, but it's a loudspeaker coil that's been specially wound to drive heavy materials rather than things like paper. This type, which is about the best that are available, is still not very good power-wise. It's said that the same people who are designing these are designing similar units for the Navy to be used underwater, which are capable of 100 watts of power. And I don't know whether I believe it, but I have to have one in my hands to believe it.
The amount of money they're putting into that defense stuff, probably.
How many watts can these take?
Let's see. Some people who work with me drive them at 25 watts. The manufacturer claims 40 watts, but then his instructions tell you to limit it to more like 15.
I wasn't here last night. Is this the setup for the performance?
Yes.
Just a little bit about what's that about the performance itself.
The performance is virtually experimenting with this setup. Trying to make it do what it was designed to do, and exploring all the variations in it. It's like discovering what's there.
And you're working with a chimney cleaner? That's a chimney cleaner? Or
it is.
Chimney sweep?
It is. It's from France, where they call it the Hedgehog. I looked in the dictionary. There's no English reference. Though you'd think there'd be an old one.
I brought a friend yesterday to see this, and it was his first time ever hearing contemporary music. Afterward, I found I had trouble explaining to him what it was all about, because for me, I have a lot of experience with it, but it was a very hard piece for me to listen to. And it was extremely interesting, but just orally it was very, very difficult. And I was wondering if you could give me something to take back to him beyond what I tried to give to him last night, an explanation of why. I mean, he wanted to know why somebody would do something like this. And I tried to explain as best I could, but I can't explain that for you, so I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit and why you're interested in this.
Well, okay. I've always been interested in natural sound phenomena. And so, if I look at the kinds of work that I've done in the past years, I see that somehow or other that's always connected with it. One of the most important things, which seems always to occur no matter what I do, is my relationship to a loudspeaker. Because I don't like the sound of loudspeakers when the music sounds canned, if I can use that word. And for me, the loudspeaker is a real instrument. And I've been blessed by having the opportunity to experiment a lot in performance. That's sort of difficult, unless you get yourself into a situation like that. So that a lot of what I've learned about electronics, I've learned from performing. And I have no formal training at all, and I picked up a lot from whoever's willing to contribute to it. For instance, Richard Lehrman and so on. And but being in a situation where I could virtually improvise in time, I really learned a lot. And one of the things that I found out, it happened one day in Australia where I had been, I was performing a virtually new piece. It was something I'd been working on, and I had performed it experimentally. And they told me they were going to record it. So I told them that I myself had no equipment available to record it with because everything was incorporated into the setup. So he asked me, can you give me a line level signal, or shall I use microphones? And I said I could give him line, but I would prefer if he used microphones. So his setup allowed him to establish both things. So the performance started and went on it was an hour and a half piece. And he couldn't give me a tape right away, but I was coming back to Sydney, so I said, can I have it when I come back? And he said, yes. When I came back, it was like there was no connection. He didn't even want to remember that he recorded it. And a friend of his, who was also a friend of mine, said, he would get the tape for me. And when I got the tape, I could see exactly what had happened. The guy had set out, recording it with microphones, plus line, and after 5 minutes, he turned off the microphones. And there was only the line level signal present. And I learned something which I had not really been aware of. But the thing is that I learned finally that the particular loudspeakers which you're using are part of the performance. And the piece involved pulses, which were done by a process of amplitude modulation, which made variable rhythms. I mean, the rhythms could be varied by changing the settings of the pots. But the pulses were so sharp that if they're recorded at line level, you only hear a series of clicks. There's virtually nothing to listen to. But the loudspeaker unit is a vibrating diaphragm, and that makes the sound.
And the room space becomes part of the instrument.
Exactly. Something similar is going on here, because part of the generation has already been prepared and is on tape, and those are they're done with this machine here, which was invented to help you with your dirty records that are full of clicks and pops. So this machine was made to take them out. Now that's something that doesn't interest me at all, but what did interest me was the person who marketed this put it in an invert mode so that you can hear what you're taking out. so I thought, okay, that's for me. And sure enough, it produces the clicks and pops which are already present. So I took a collection of tapes that I've been leaning heavily on for years, that were all recorded at laboratories, and they're tapes of brain waves, eye muscle movements, biceps and things like that, and not only from human beings, also from animals and from insects. And I had the opportunity to collect those in 1970 when I was programming a pavilion in Japan for Expo 70. So I got a lot of that material, and I took that kind of material already has very useful things for me, because usually, for instance, brainwaves are very, very strongly pulsed. There are a lot of peaks present. So I put them through this machine, and of course the amount of it's got a variable threshold, so that you can get just a few impulses, or you can get a whole string of them. So that's really intrinsic to this performance. Otherwise, there are three methods of operation here simultaneously. The first one is the generation of the sound itself. And if I do it, if I'm faithful to what I set out to do, it starts with my activating this object. And that's the reason why the tapes are here, because I have to get the thing going. Once it's going, I have the pickups. There are 4 pickups that are receiving the sound that the thing is producing. Now, when it's activated, all those tones vibrate very gently. So I've attached the pickups very loosely, so that they'll hopefully get knocked by something producing it, then another impulse. Most often it turned out last night that most often it either gave me a string of impulses rather than single ones, which I'm still hoping for. Maybe I'll get them tonight. If I loosen up the relation of the pickups to the object, then that may come about. The other thing it does is produce continuous wave material, and that's because of it's the nature of that kind of transducer, because there's a sound which is virtually a hum, but even that, if there's no sound in it which overrides that, you will get a continuous sound from it. And of course that because any material that you use has a resonance, I'm going to get resonant frequencies from that. Then there's the second part is transforming what I get off these pickups, and here I've done it by further gating the sound. So I have the 4 pickups. I have 4 gates working and 4 filters. So it's a simple. For me, it's a rather simple concept. But the thing is that it's an active transformation whose parameters I can change during performance. So it gives me something to do. Because I'm constantly reacting to what I'm hearing and trying to bring about the differences which I know are inherent in the process.
How much can you anticipate the sounds you're going to achieve? Are you getting used to the possibilities of the Hedgehog, the sounds that will come out of it?
Yeah, the more I perform it, the more I know where the really important parameters are. I learned a lot about it last night, but tonight will show the difference. And the last part is listening to what I'm producing and trying to make it appear different. That's very important to my work at the present time. Actually, for maybe 5-6 years past, because in the early days when I first started, I worked a lot in sound generation. My aim being to try to generate sound without any instrument. That is, no oscillators, no taped, no recorded materials. Just simply trying to bring about a state of oscillation without any of those things. And first thing I found out was that I could induce oscillation by phase, working with phase, with loops of feedback, having a change of phase. And all you need virtually is an amplifier. And an amplifier of sufficient power. I mean, it doesn't. 10 milliwatts is too much, right? I mean, you're not really talking about much power, but it's got to be. You have to have like a gain of 10, we call it. You put a feedback loop around it, and experimentation is the name of the game. Because you first of all you can just take the output of it and feed it into the input, or you can take the output, you can reverse its phase, which is easy to do just by reversing the 2 conductors. Or you can do a variable. You can have variable phase. So I made a lot of equipment, a lot of small boxes, each one having different parameters of change of phase. And gradually equipment began to accumulate for performance. Like I would have this much equipment present just to generate these sounds, but everything was homemade. So I came to a situation where my hands were completely tied in performance, trying to do the generation. So I had new work to perform, and as life does it to you, it was abroad. So in other words, I couldn't take 4 suitcases of equipment with me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do all this sound generation. I'm going to record it and then use it in performance. So I recorded it just in order to have a body of material that I could use. And the idea was not to be concerned with what it was during the performance. I mean, it wasn't important which tape it wasn't important where the tape started. It just meant you had to have something to generate the process. Then what I did take with me was a miniature version of this sound generation, which I used to further process the tapes which were there, so that I had a series of feedback loops with variable phase. So that taught me that there's a lot you can do in performance, really, with very, very simple material, just by manipulating the sound. And that was a four-channel piece. So by making the sound appear different in all the four speakers, you have a natural, you have automatic delay and sound imaging. So then, after that, I began to work intensively with that, making the sound appear different than the original. So a lot of my current work incorporates that, and as you can see, I'm sort of lazy, because instead of building the things myself, I'm trying to use the components available on the market in the same way that I experimented with making my own. And some things are good, some things are very useful, other things are pieces of junk. They'll eventually get weeded out. I hope that gives you a little more.
Thank you.
This is one of the devices used to make the sound appear different. It's a device which sends sound around through the four speakers. And I have altered it so that, first of all, I changed the speed so it has a great range. It goes up to 32 cycles per second, so that I can obtain sound modulation with it. Because the speed of it's going through the loudspeakers becomes audible, and that frequency modulates the sound that you're putting into it. Furthermore, instead of giving it one input, I gave it four, so that I can do. I can put four different things in it. So, in other words, I can create a sound just by doing it. Because this thing. First of all, the speed going through the loudspeaker modulates the sound. Then I further altered it so that well, you see, these things are designed by somebody. His idea is that, well, since if you move the sound too quickly from one speaker to another, the waveform will be cut off. So, in other words, the sound will be chopped. So then the idea is to smooth that transition from the movement from the exiting one speaker to the entrance to the next. So I had to go into the box and defeat that to get what I wanted, which was the chopping. I still have to build my own. I'm not satisfied with it. It's not clean enough.
So you go into most of these boxes and alter them?
In many cases, I do. Like this one is a jam that I picked up recently. it's got an LED in it. It's interesting that this is like a threshold control. The Japanese have called it noise floor, and their parameters are stop and go. When it's stopped, the LED is registering red. When it's go, it's registering green. But this is the only one so far. Actually, I know of another one which is not yet on the market. But this is the only one that has a gate where you can trigger it. So I did go inside for this and altered the trigger so I could make the output sharper.
So did that start out as just a noise gate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, I keep asking myself, well, why don't I go to digital generation or use a computer to do these things? And I always come back to the same feeling that I need the resolution that I can get with analog components and not the digital. And also, it's because I like to perform the pieces in real time, so that I've done some work in digital, and it takes a lot of preparation in order to get a situation where you can surprise yourself. Whereas here it's automatic. That you're in a sense, you can't know exactly what's going to happen, but my job is to influence it so that it does happen.
Would it be possible to hear a little
Yeah, I hope. Let's see. Roadmap. I don't have it memorized.
Do you always begin the same one?
No.
How do you get like the brain waves and things into gates or pulses?
Excuse me?
Well, you say that some of these gates and pulses are taken from like brainwave activity and things like that, and I was wondering how you get that activity into actual audible pulses or gates that can be put on a cassette tape.
Well, I didn't. I mean, it was collected from the laboratory who had actually recorded it. And I have several different types. There's nothing with me of that material. Oh, as a matter of fact, there is. So I can. And now sometimes, for instance, brainwaves have very slow frequencies. So laboratories gave me, for the most part, they gave me already modulated tapes because they in order to make them listenable to, they wanted to have them stepped up in frequency. So it's a very simple process of modulating the wave with another one so that you get it up into what they consider to be an audible range. Now, with some of the tapes I was very lucky because they had put the modulating signal on one side of the stereo tape. So I was able to demodulate them partially, to get them back more to their original state. So pardon?
Which would acoustically appear to be percussive effects?
It would enhance the natural percussion. Then I then took those tapes and I further processed them so that they became absolutely percussive.
How did you do that?
Well, I used this.
Oh, in live performance. Yeah.
Well, I do it live in addition to having pre-prepared it.
So the sound that's exciting, this is just a steady tone.
So what's the sound we're hearing right now? Where's it coming from? Is it coming from the transducers? Okay,
Yeah.
Some of your thought processes as you're turning knobs and knobs, what you're looking for, thinking about, is that mundane or I'm not curious about what's going on?
Well, I'm trying to, I want to get the pickup sound for you. So I'm looking for it. You can hear that the pulses are there as well as the continuous sound. okay. You can hear that the thing is in a state of constant vibration.
I couldn't see it, so.
No, it's infinitesimal. With certain kinds of material, I could make it so that you could see it, but then it would be even more continuous to be done. I can't do it.
Sound from the loudspeakers that stimulates it into its vibration?
No, it's the transducer which is making it, because there's audio frequency in it, it's making it vibrate.
Actually, the audio frequency that's making it vibrate is fed into it. It's not picking it in the air from the speakers?
No.
There's a thing in there that's vibrating?
Yeah. It's being driven. It's being driven by two voice coils.
Oh, I see.
If it were a solid object, the situation would be completely different. Because then you would get more of the pulses out. My idea here was to make it, I used it, it attracted me because it does vibrate naturally. I mean, you can't help it. And so it, instead of the situation which I've used a lot in the past, where I have a firmly attached microphone so that I'm only withdrawing from it the resonant frequencies that material gets. Here I wanted to have chance activation. So I thought if this thing really vibrates enough, it's going to hit my pickups. So I think actually they're too firmly attached. But now, let's see.
What are these things right here? Those contact cords?
Pardon?
Those switches.
These are matrix switches. Look at that. See what you had? There we go. The tape wasn't running. It was stuck.
What is the source on the tape?
Okay, let's go back to the sound of the pickups just for a second. That's the bit battery, right? So. That's the original.
That's the peaks being taken from that tape.
Mm-hmm.
That's
No, they're not. That's the sound of.
just what's on it.
That's what's on the tape. It's been recorded on this machine.
That's peaks selected from what's on the tape, is what we're hearing?
Yeah. Same sound is going into that.
On the tape then?
Yeah, it's the same tape going into that.
How can we don't hear like little pulses? How can we hear this?
You do it.
Is this sensitive to air movements as well?
I'm hearing some of those.
Let's see if we can get the others for you.
Are these the optics that you were using in rainforest, or were you using? I always thought they were pillow speakers.
Yeah. I use them. Then, because of all this possible switching, like last night, I don't think I can do it for you now, but these sounds that you hear from the pickups, I put them back to the gates, and then they again appear differently than they are now.
And can you feed them back to the transducer? So
Feed them back to the
loop?
transducer, right?
How mobile is this setup as a whole? Say, for example, the opportunity you had, would you be able to just go travel from one place to another with the whole setup?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Would it be possible to play the two pickups separately, hear the two different the sounds they're making?
Yeah, I've seen that.
So which one is operating now? The antenna one?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Clicks are here.
No, the pickups. There's one on top and the
I'm not
antenna.
sure. Pickup. I virtually don't care.
Okay.
Okay, there's one.
So they are very different.
This is the fourth one. And it's easy to alter the
Matrix board, that's your own built creation.
which.
The Matrix boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Those are just routing it through various different groupings of these other things.
Yes. Yes, the idea is all the inputs and outputs are completely accessible. And I wish it were true. It's awfully difficult.
It's sort of a grown-up version of a contact board.
Pardon?
Sort of a grown-up version of a contact board.
Well, you know, these guys were boiling it, and I didn't notice any gross effects in the sound system. Hey.
Some places when they tap, it taps.
Come on, how do we know you aren't faking?
No, a couple of times when he tapped, it tapped. I heard it twice.
Pickup it, yeah.
Yeah, did you hear it when you were
Well,
talking?
he wasn't tapping just the pickup, he was tapping the middle there.
Yeah.
Those are the pickups, though.
Oh, I don't believe it now.
It's too easy.
Hey, it's a nice stuff piano.
Do you know what all of the connections are when you switch it, or are you listening more than you're moving across, say,
Oh, I
circuit
generally
diagram?
know. I generally know. If I don't, I'd have to refer to my diagram.
And when you do a piece like this for the first time, like we did last night, you find that the next time you've learned enough from it so that you really can make things change and stuff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderfully interesting that you choose to go into a performance in that state, doing the piece the first time and then the second time and third time. What causes you to approach that? It's totally different from the keyboard instrumental approach to making music.
It's the difficulty of rehearsing. I mean, there's no way you can rehearse a live space.
But it's directly experimental.
It is.
Didn't Liszt have the same attitude? He only played a piece 3 times. The first time straight, the second time decorated, and the third time decorated so much you couldn't recognize it, and he never played it again.
Yeah, maybe. And let's see, let's show you the. If I can get there.
We've been using that exclusively so far. What about these? What's on
Well, they're very similar. I mean, it's the same type of thing.
Are they tamed the same way?
Yes.
Are most of the sounds that you're using generated from human physiological type experiences? Is that a theme in this piece?
Let's see.
Or I mean a conscious theme.
One is generated from a Scotch brook. One is made by a modulated pulse generator. Another one is recorded from an Australian bird that's been phase modulated by myself. The one you're listening to.
No, which bird was it?
Nightjar. Nightjar is one of the most fantastic sounds there is, but it's so heavily pulsed. It's one of the best sounds to test the loudspeaker. Okay, and the rest of it is modulated brainwaves.
How'd you get to modulated brainwaves?
I called up the laboratory.
No, but what provoked you in that direction?
I was collecting a whole different bunch of material. So, and I had a small staff working for me. There were 2 people busy telephoning various laboratories, and one of the guys knew had enough connections so that we got a lot of nice things. We got a lot of natural sound. We got underwater sounds. We got telemetry from NASA, and lots of this brainwave stuff. In some cases, he was able to go somewhere and supervise the recording. I remember one thing he gave me, which I've already used it in 2 pieces, was he recorded mosquitoes. So So we went to a place where they had millions of mosquitoes, and they were put into a test tube and then recorded. And then later on they were put into a water jar, and the sound came out in a totally different frequency range.
Were you a composer in residence somewhere at that time?
No. I was just freelance.
You teach
No, I was working for this pavilion.
You teach at Stony Brook, is that correct?
No, that's the confusion. I live in Stony Point.
I'm sorry.
Stony Brook is on Long Island.
Do you work for a university?
Not presently.
I was curious about your using the brainwaves because when I was listening to the performance last night, spontaneously, I felt very strongly that you were tuning the resonant frequency of my brain. And I'm curious if you were particularly into that or if that was just my own...
I don't mind at all.
It was helpful.
No, it is an interesting field. I remember once I was teaching at Davis, and they wanted a series of performances of various kinds of things. So I did Alvin Lucier's brainwave piece, and
Is that live in real time, so to speak?
Yeah, I did it live.
People sitting there with electrodes on their heads?
No, just me.
Oh.
It's a piece for a solo performer. It's very old, isn't it? Is it
1960,
early 60s?
Can you change the sounds by consciously doing things in your head?
Oh, yes, you can shut it on and off.
Just by taking thought?
It depends on, let's see, I have to remember. I haven't done it since that time, so
I think that you would not visualize to get the alphas to come out.
yeah, but there's the thing that it depends on where the electrodes are on your head. If they're in their back, then it's more like you don't visualize. If they're in the
That's
front,
the visual area.
huh?
That's where the visual stuff is.
Yeah, but if they can also be put in the front, and there, you either turn things on or off. I've forgotten which, by closing your eyes. Right? It's quite different. And see, I had no equipment to perform this piece, so we had to go to the laboratory at the university, and the guy there said, "Oh yes, they're testing chickens here all the time." So he said, "I know how to do that." So first he put the electrodes on the front of my head, and everything worked fine. Then I was a little bit conscience-stricken because I knew that Alvin had done all of his work with putting them on the back of his head. So we did that, and in order to make this test, we had to bring in an amplifier and loudspeaker. So I said to Larry Austin, take in your old junk amplifier in case anything happens. But he didn't. He put in a brand new Macintosh transistor amplifier. And when the electrodes were on the back of my head, suddenly I spotted a puff of smoke. And I said, "Turn off the amplifier." And sure enough, one channel was gone. And Larry Austin refused to believe it. And I said, "Well, let's try this again. There must be something wrong." So I said, "Don't do it." We did it anyway, and that time the loudspeaker burst into flames. I had to run down the hall to get water.
That's what I'm thinking too.
It was beautiful enough so that I wanted to do it.
Sorry, Jimi Hendrix.
I did do it live once, but not for that piece of my own.
was your sound source the time that happened every time?
Oh, it was a piece of mine that I had done for Merce Cunningham, and we were in a theater in Buffalo, which had been an old movie house, and Cunningham Company carries around the sound system, but if possible, we like to have a couple more channels. So the sound man in the theater said, "Well, we have these movie speakers up in the attic, and they were immense. I never saw such huge speakers, and they were very old." And he said that he had used them occasionally recently, and he said there was a problem with one of them. But if there was any problem, that he would come later in the afternoon and replace the speaker. So one of the speakers, the voice coil froze. It means that it stops moving. So that meant there was danger to the amplifier, just for example. So we called the guy up, and he came over. And he didn't have very much time, so he didn't go back into the attic and get another one, because there were like 8 of them up there. But he simply kicked the loudspeaker cone and the voice coil, and then it came back in operation. But in the performance, it was okay for about 8 minutes out of an 18-minute piece. Then the voice coil froze, and eventually it burst into flames. So the firemen came rushing down, wanting to evacuate everybody. Actually, it was only it was smoke, really, but it could have become flame.
So would that make the performance a little more dramatic, do you think, or just to take away from
I loved it.
Did you tape the incident and use that as a source?
Well, I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if you had a series of throwaway voice cones and coils, or you could make a piece like that, or you would make any difference. No, the kind of thing is perfectly possible. Like a girl who was performing with me in Oregon. We were doing a realization of a cage piece, and she was allowed to select any activity that she wanted. And so she decided that her contribution would be that she would sew a paper dress, because she was a seamstress. And that after that she would model the paper dress, and then she would set it on fire. And she did.
While she was wearing it?
While she was wearing it. And it was gone, like the whole thing was gone, like in 2 seconds flat. It had just simply disappeared. And she knew that was what was going to happen.
What shape was she in?
Perfectly calm. She wasn't afraid. I mean, she just put the dress on over what she was wearing. She put a match to it.
When you put the electrodes on the back of your head, do you have to shave a patch of hair?
You can, but it's not necessary. Well, any more questions?
Was the last album on Pulsar's title, just your most recent?
Excuse me, what? Oh, that last album?
Yeah, was that your last album?
Yeah. It's old music, though.
Do you have plans for another cassette or album?
Yeah, there's another one in the works, but
For lovely music?
lovely and good, but we don't know how and when.
When you make recordings, do you ever wish you could put specifications for equipment to use? Because the speaker is so important in your work. And then someone takes it home and listens on whatever thing they have.
I don't know what to do. The thing is, the best results that I've gotten is with binaural recording. And so far there isn't a decent unit, that you can specify to play it back on. Keep hoping that it's going to come about, but there's nothing. And then, of course, all my work is at least quad. The piece that's going to come out is called Dialects, and that's 8 channels. And when you listen to it binaurally, it's very obvious that the but there are more than 4 channels, and there are things like the sound meeting in the back of your head and all that. But so far there's no way to get that on the stereo system. And we've already tried to press that. And we went direct from a digital original, thinking that it was going to work, and the engineer thought it would work perfectly, and all kinds of clicks and pops appear. And it's because of the digital recording process. And so that meant the expense of remastering it and repressing it. Lovely didn't want to get into it without being sure that it was going to be really work. Because otherwise they could, ideally, if they brought it out on video, it'd be fine. It'd be fine, there'd be no problem.
I'm interested in your concept of what constitutes an event, or I've noticed in listening last night that you have these kind of longer stretches where you create an environment or something that you like, and then it abruptly changes. There's always an abrupt change into kind of the next duration. What leads you to make the changes, or do you like to go through your setup kind of one system at a time and explore it that way, or what makes you change now or at any point?
There's no preset plan. I try to find everything that's there. And if I like something, I tend to let it run itself. Or I see what is behind it that's, could be released. And I try that. Sometimes you try a gesture which produces an abrupt change, and at that point I have to decide what to do. I can incorporate the change process and continue doing that, or I can accept the change and try to establish that. It all depends on how you feel about time.
So you're often changing your instruments, but the big abrupt changes that I would hear are more something that you fall onto. It's not so much I will make a...
Sometimes. They were last night. And when I become master of this piece, I can do things like that quite deliberately. And then we'll find out, what the natural format in time can be.
But is that kind of perfection worth repeating or repeatable?
No, but it's nice to have the experience. I mean, see, last night was the first time, and I'm dealing here with two switches, and so I have to constantly refer one to the other in order to know what I'm doing. Now, like the third time I performed this piece, I'll have it down pat. I know which switch to look at first, and then because in other words, I'll have my diagram already. It's already part of my mind and my fingers. So then I'm in a quite different situation as regards time, because I don't have to stop to consider, if I'm making a mistake.
Where do you grow from there?
Then I would start with weeding out components and deciding how to better realize my idea.
An idea that you wouldn't know at the beginning?
No, the process is already there, and it's here. But the first time, it's there somewhere, right? It's not truly obvious. For instance, there's a relationship, which after we finish here, I'm going to change it. There's a relationship between the pickups and the signal gates, and I thought real hard about how I can get this so it's easy to control. It turned out to be very difficult, so I had to make a change in the hookup so in order to make it easy for myself.
Do you come to experimental music from a traditional background, or do you always have an interest in kind of experimental music? Was it early on in your life or later on?
No, I was always interested in the contemporary scene, and the more experimental it got, the better I liked it.
When did you play your debut as a pianist?
I was 9 years old.
Where was that?
Philadelphia, in a radio station.
Did you have much room to experiment?
Not at all.
When did you come across what you would now consider contemporary music?
Pardon?
When did you come across music that you would now consider contemporary music?
First thing I was aware of was when I was an assistant to an organist, and he played a piece of Messiaen, and I laughed out loud when I heard it.
How old were you then?
11.
So this was a different attitude. This was an attitudinal shift that took place with them.
Yeah, and I liked, I enjoyed the vitality of the contemporary scene, and that made me actually change to become a pianist. Because I was already in a heavy career as an organist, and all of a sudden I decided I have a lot more opportunity if I really attack the piano literature.
How old were you by this when that happened?
17 or so.
Could you discuss your concept of, you said when I become a master of this piece, your concept of mastery of a particular piece and musical mastery? Just what you see to be the components.
Oh, I had the piece in my head already. I got it in my ears too. It's just that, the performance procedure, mastering that. Like to master any instrument. It so happens that for electronic music it can be very different because each setup is like a different instrument. For instance, this a setup in which there is a switching facility is quite a different one from one where you only have potentiometer control. It's like a whole different world. Mm-hmm. Another difference comes about if you collect a lot of foot pedals. So there's that. Take into account.
Well, I'm just wondering when you said I master something, it brought up questions about also about experimental music. Like, to what extent is a musical expression an experiment? I mean, how heavily is experiment weighed against the fact that something is going to be produced? I mean, how important is the element of experimentation versus the fact that there is something going to be created? Right. Well, an event, whatever. I mean, can an event be successful or not successful based on the experimentation, or is an event just an event? Or
well, you have a lot of variables. Well, everything contributes to everything. It's not really a linear process at all. Matter of fact, the composition for me is it's circular. It doesn't really start anywhere. It's constantly referring to its past and its future. So that kind of question isn't important because I can't distinguish between the experiment and the performance. You see, if I do that, I'm getting into what he said, making a product. And there's no product here.
Do you feel more or less satisfied or happy or elated after some performances than others?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any correlation between the times when you feel more satisfied?
It's when I perform well.
And what constitutes performing well?
When I master the situation. Performing well.
Well, it's just like you said, just weeding out the things that don't work in a performance and that.
But once you've mastered the situation, then you do a new setup and master that, and so on. You don't stick with the one you've mastered and continue to relate yourself.
There's always some minute alteration, and occasionally a big one.
Do you get tired of a situation once you've mastered it?
No. There are always interesting things like when I'm performing with the Cunningham Company. The same piece might have to appear on 4 speakers, 5 speakers, 6 speakers, 7 speakers, 8 speakers, sometimes 10. Well, I'm equipped to handle 8, but there are situations where like a channel is multiplexed, and so I might have to handle 10 or 12. And then it's amazing what happens to your performance ability, because all of a sudden you have to make a completely new diagram. Giving you different possibilities. So 8 speakers is very, very different than 7. Right? It means that usually what it means is that you no longer have 4 pairs of speakers, but you have 3 pairs and an oddball. The question is then, what's the function of the oddball? If there were 4 pairs, then you have a quad where which pair opposes another pair and so forth. But if you have an oddball, then something special has to be up there, and then it depends on the nature of the oddball. Maybe it's a tin horn, or it can be a bullhorn. Right? So there are interesting ways to change your
pieces tend to evolve toward a definitive version?
I would say only up to a point. There's a point where it's done everything that you wanted it to do, and you know that if you needed to, you could do it that way again.
And do you start losing interest in the piece at that point, or when do you, other than external circumstances, when do you want to do a new piece?
Well, see, all of my works are sort of process compositions. Now, the only one that I dropped after I'd done it because I was simply not interested was a piece I did on a synthesizer. And I was teaching how to use a synthesizer in India, and friends of mine brought me there because they thought I was the man who could do it. And I ran into a situation where we gave a performance, and one of my students, who had a beautiful piece, was too shy to perform it. So all of a sudden I had to make something. So I took a couple of hours and I made a synthesizer piece. And I've since used it. It's a good piece, and but it's not going to lead me any further. I'm never going to do that again. And there's nothing about the synthesizer which would make me do it.
Well, why? And why? What do you think of? What kind of synthesizer was it?
It was an early mode. It was
with
like
keyboard
68.
With a keyboard or just the...
There was a keyboard there, but I refused to use it. No, I'll tell you what I did. I decided to that I better find a way to tweak it out. And I'd already done a little experimenting, like with the early bookless synthesizer. A very nice technique was to load a mixer up and put it in a feedback loop. So I decided to take a single oscillator and load up all its control inputs, and sure enough, you'd think that there were 30 oscillators, but there's only one. And it's okay. The variety of sound is sufficient for me, but ordinarily I can't stand the the coherence of the sound. So don't attract me. Every time I've had to use a synthesizer or a synthesizer component, I've had to add something outboard to it that will change the way it operates. It's mostly because all the considerations of the voltage, what voltage things work on, what the output signal level is, that's all coordinated. Now, if you can manage to uncoordinate that, you're in a completely different position. It's like this. The early surge synthesizer was marvelous to experiment with, because there were so many points available to you to work with. Like there were outputs taken from internal parts of the circuitry of each component. So you really had a lot to do with it.
What brand was that?
Now he calls it Serge. It was Serge Dretman, who's at the California Institute of the Arts.
So
He still markets a synthesizer, but it's quite different now than the early one.
You're not using any electronic oscillators in this piece at all?
No, there was sort of a sustained sound that was making this vibrate. Was that also on the tape that had the...
No, it isn't.
Where does that sound come from?
It comes from that object.
But...
It's going through
But where is the sustained sound before it gets into there? Where does it come from? Am I being clear with the question? In other words, it's kind of like a steady hum which is going into this, which makes this vibrate.
I know, I don't understand it.
So this thing of itself...
The tape, I think, the source that's just kind of feeding that.
All I know is that it always happens with the transducers when you're there.
Well,
When
could
you're
it be
there
amplifying tape
next
this?
to it. It happened even in rainforests.
Well, I just think it'd be noise.
It's noise, yes.
Yeah.
It's just noise.
Oh, I see.
The first sound you made is a little bit like steam coming out of a radiator. Was that modulated through the Hedgehog?
Mm-hmm.
What was this original source of that? And what was that? Was one of your brainwave?
It was one of the pickups, and it didn't equalize for extremely high frequency.
Was there a sound input to the Hedgehog at that point, or was that just an ambient room?
No, there was a sound input.
That was my question, too.
What, you can briefly say, maybe, I don't know if it's late directly, except I don't know if you can answer it. What's your opinion of the future of music? What do you see the most exciting things happening
lies with
now,
you.
or the new generation, aside from the digital stuff?
It doesn't matter whether it's digital or anything like that. It's a question of perception. And it's quite obvious to me that there's a whole new breed of people coming into music. And so things are going to change. And the change is going to come from them. It's not going to come from any idea of digital or analog. Like the group that we call ourselves Composers Inside Electronics. It's supposed to be a loose group, but it happened that the ones of us who formed it, I'm a musician. Ralph Jones was a musician. Phil Eddystone was a computer man. And the fourth one is a designer, John Driscoll. And Philip and John had no musical background whatsoever. However, they were able to make very, very beautiful music. But if you're experiencing it, you're aware of a very different relationship to time than I have. I mean, I have a comparatively dynamic relationship to time because of my performing experience, but theirs is completely different. It's more like the experience of listening to a painting, if you can picture what I mean, right? And that's made a big change. Some people don't like it at all. I've spoken to older musicians, and they say, "Oh, these electronic guys, they're doing the same thing all the time. What they do is they set something up, and then they just let it run, as though it were performing itself." Of course, it's not true, but if you don't perceive, if you're not aware that something else is going on, and you think music hasn't changed, but it's changing.
I'm sorry, what's changing? You said music.
Music's changing all
I don't understand what you mean by music. I can understand what you mean.
What do you think it is? Well, there's only one thing which can change your mind about what music is, and that is if you can make a differentiation between tone and sound. If you can do that, then you have a clue to where the music is. Because tone is something that happens inside you, in your ear. Sound is something that happens in space. And if you have that differentiation, then it'll lead somewhere. For instance, it led me to not use an oscillator, not to depend on a montage of pre-recorded tape, but to find out what electronic components were doing themselves. And you can explain everything, say, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And there was only one person who came back to me with a real understanding and explanation of what I was doing. And he said, but, what are you using? And I said, they're filters and preamplifiers and there are gains. And he said, you only have amplifiers. It was a physicist who told me that. And it's completely true. And then all of a sudden, it's like a light going on, and all of a sudden you understand something that you've been doing naturally, that a filter is an amplifier, right? Everything you have is amplifiers, and if you start out from that perception, things start to get a lot easier.
But you're building out of, in the term signal to noise ratio, you're making your signal out of the noise.
Yeah, you use the natural state of the components for what they give you, not what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. What they actually tell you.
The description of one of these components is telling you something that the designer thinks that it should do, and then you put it to the test and you find it doesn't do that. Nowadays, there are a lot of people coming to me who are using the kind of stuff that I do, and they see that I'm using it, so they think that I can help them. Their problems are for instance, they're using an instrument. They buy something and they think it's going to work perfectly, and they find that the distortion is so awful that they hate the sound that they're making. What's wrong? And usually it's like a simple impedance problem, but in the end it turns out not to be simple. You have to find something that does what you want it to. And I'm not a good person to ask, because signal to noise isn't very, very interesting to me. I mean, it's only if I have to make a recording, then I'm, I have to know what I'm doing in that respect. But otherwise, I tend to use it.
What kind of music do you listen to? I mean, in your leisure or whatever, do you?
What kind of
music? I mean, other people's music. Do you ever buy albums or recordings of other composers, or
No. No. People give me things, and if I don't have what interests me, I ask for it. Like there's this guy in California, Phil Laurie. His music I admired a great deal years ago, and I wanted to keep up with him. So the last time I met him, I asked him to send me tapes, and he was doing gorgeous music.
I would like to say that I think we should stop now, even though we said we were going to go on until 3. David was due to arrive on Thursday, Friday. Mm-hmm. But obviously he did, and he came here early yesterday morning, and he only had 1 day to set up as opposed to 2. So I just, again, would like to invite those of you that did not hear the performance last night to come, this evening. Okay? Thanks.
I have a quick question.